We welcome you to another journey through the quiet archive of human story and thought. Settle into comfort, close your eyes if you wish, and allow your breath to slow. This time is yours, a quiet space for rest and gentle curiosity. Tonight, our journey takes us north, far into the cold lands of the Norse, lands where winter lingers long and the skies dance with shifting lights, lands where stories were told in firelit halls, when snow pressed against wooden doors and the night seemed endless. In these stories, the Norse imagined the world not as a single realm, but as many. 9 great worlds, each with its own nature, its own beings, its own destiny. And binding them together, stronger than stone, older than memory, was a tree, Yggdrasil, the world tree, an immense ash that stood at the very center of existence. Its branches stretched high into the heavens, gleaming with frost and starlight. Its trunk rose like a pillar between earth and sky, and its roots reached so deep they touched hidden realms beneath the surface of the world. The Norse did not think of Yggdrasil as a symbol. To them, it was real as the sea, as real as the mountains, as real as the bitter wind against the skin. Wander slowly, see its crown rising higher and higher, so tall that clouds drift through its branches, so vast that the sun itself might seem to rest in its leaves. Imagine its bark, rough and weathered, carved with age and story, as though each line held a memory of the worlds it bound together. Imagine the roots, thick as rivers, burrowing through earth and stone, winding into darkness, into frost, into waters that hold wisdom and fate. Around this tree, the 9 worlds were woven like jewels on a necklace, each suspended by its branches and roots. Realms of gods and giants, realms of men and spirits, realms of fire and mist. To the Norse, everything was connected, tied by threads that ran unseen, threads that Yggdrasil carried in silence. But though it was vast, Yggdrasil was not untouched. The tree lived, but it suffered. Its bark bore wounds, its roots were gnawed, its branches were plucked and pierced. Creatures made their homes within it, some gentle, some cruel. Yet for all its trials, Yggdrasil endured, always standing, always binding, always alive. The people who told these tales lived close to hardship, harsh winters, scarce harvests, the threat of storm and sea. Perhaps in Yggdrasil they saw a reflection of their own lives, a world that could be wounded, yet still endured, a strength not of perfect safety, but of persistence through struggle. Tonight we will wander slowly around this mighty tree. We will pause at its roots, where wells of wisdom flow and where fate itself is spun. We will listen to the creatures that dwell in its branches, from the eagle above to the dragon below. We will look upon the 9 worlds that rest within its span, each with its own character, its own place in the story. And we will follow the gods, who knew that their own destinies were written into Yggdrasil's bark. Yggdrasil is not merely the backdrop of Norse myth, it is its beating heart, a living map of existence, a reminder of connection, of struggle, and of renewal. So let us step gently now into its shadow and begin our journey beneath its branches. To understand Yggdrasil is to understand the Norse view of the universe itself. For the people of the far north, the world was not a flat land beneath the sky, nor a sphere turning in endless space, but something more mysterious, more alive. The world, and all that lay beyond it, was bound together by the trunk, branches, and roots of a vast tree. This was Yggdrasil, the world tree. It stood at the very center of existence, a living axis that joined all realms together. Its presence was not confined to one place. To the Norse, Yggdrasil was everywhere, in the frost that bit at their fingers, in the soil beneath their feet, in the stars that glittered in the night sky. All of these, they believed, were tied invisibly to the tree's lifeblood. Picture it now. Its trunk rises from the middle of the worlds, so vast that even 1,000 men, hand in hand, could not circle its base. The bark is dark, etched with lines of age, each mark like the memory of a storm weathered or an age endured. Higher and higher the trunk climbs, vanishing into clouds, its crown spreading like a forest in the sky. Branches stretch outward, some heavy with leaves that glisten with dew, others sharp and bare, clawing against the heavens. These branches are said to hold the very stars, like ornaments hung upon its boughs. Below, its roots dig deeper than the eye can follow. Some twist down into caverns of ice, where frost clings and shadows never lift. Others burrow through rock and soil, finding their way to sacred waters that flow with wisdom. One root, it is said, touches the realm of the dead, winding its way into silence. Another anchors the realm of the gods, firm and unshaking. A third stretches to the land of giants, coiling among stone and storm. In this way, Yggdrasil binds together realms both high and low, bright and dark, near and distant. The Norse saw 9 worlds suspended within this tree. Each world was like a bead upon a string, threaded together by Yggdrasil's unseen fibers. There was Asgard, the golden home of the gods, Midgard, the middle world of men, fragile and ringed with seas, Jotunheim, the land of giants, where mountains rose like teeth against the horizon, Hell, the underworld, cold and silent, and others still, realms of mist and fire, of elves and dwarves, of ancient gods long before the Aesir. All were tied together, held in balance by the tree. Yet Yggdrasil was not perfect, nor untouchable. Like all living things, it carried strain and wound. At its base, creatures gnawed at its roots. In its crown, others tore at its branches. The bark was pierced and scarred, the leaves bitten and broken. But still, the tree endured, always standing, always binding, always alive. The Norse did not imagine a world free of struggle. Instead, they imagined a world where even the mightiest being, the very framework of existence, suffered and endured just as they did. It is worth pausing here to reflect. Imagine standing at the foot of such a tree. You tilt your head back, and still you cannot see its top. The branches vanish into the sky, lost among clouds, too high for mortal eyes. Beneath your feet, the roots spread in every direction, thicker than rivers, sinking into unseen places. The air around you hums with life, not the life of a single plant, but of all things. Every breath, every step, every thought feels tied to the slow, steady pulse of this ash tree that has stood since the dawn of time. In this vision, the Norse found meaning. Life, they believed, was woven into a single whole. No man, no god, no creature stood apart. All were connected, bound invisibly, like leaves on a branch, like drops of water in a stream. Yggdrasil was the reminder that nothing existed in isolation. All shared the same trunk, the same lifeblood, the same fate. But the tree was not only connection, it was also a place of gathering. The gods themselves were said to meet daily beneath its branches, at the foot of one of its great roots. There, beside the sacred wells, they held council, speaking of the 9 worlds and of destinies they could not escape. To the Norse, this vision gave weight to Yggdrasil. It was not just a structure of myth, it was a place where the highest of beings came together, where choices were made, where stories began. And yet, for all its grandeur, Yggdrasil was also fragile. Its leaves could wither, its bark could be cut, its roots could bleed. This was no contradiction, but a truth. The Norse did not see permanence in their world. They lived in landscapes of ice and sea, where storms could wipe away harvests, where ships could vanish in waves, where fire and frost alike claimed lives. To them, Yggdrasil's endurance was not in its invulnerability, but in its resilience. Though it suffered, it still stood. Though it was wounded, it still lived. This lesson echoes quietly even now. To see Yggdrasil is to see struggle, but also survival. A tree vast enough to bind together gods and men, yet humble enough to be scarred. A tree that groaned under the weight of 9 worlds, yet still reached toward the sky. A tree that reminded all who heard its story that existence is not free of hardship, but that strength lies in persistence, in holding fast, in standing firm even when the roots tremble. So in this first vision of Yggdrasil, we stand before its trunk. We look upward into branches that brush against heaven. We look downward into roots that coil into darkness. And we feel, perhaps for a moment, that we too are part of its design. Leaves upon its branches, threads within its bark, lives bound into the slow, eternal growth of the world tree. At the roots of Yggdrasil lie mysteries deeper than any branch or leaf could hold. For though its crown stretched into the heavens, its true power lay below, hidden in the darkness of soil and stone. There, at the places where its roots touched distant realms, rested sacred wells, vast springs that held not only water, but wisdom, memory, and fate itself. The greatest of these was the well of Urd. It lay at the base of the root that reached into Asgard, the realm of the gods. Its waters shimmered with more than reflection. They carried the patterns of time, the stories of past and future woven together. No ordinary eye could read them, but there were those who could. The Norns. 3 sisters dwelt by the well of Urd. Their names were Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, past, present, and future. Together they tended to Yggdrasil, drawing water from the well to nourish its bark, sprinkling its trunk so that it might endure. Without them, the tree would wither, and the 9 worlds it held would collapse into nothingness. But their task was not only to water the roots, they also wove the threads of destiny itself. The Norns spun the lives of men and gods alike. A thread was cast at the birth of a child, another was measured for the span of a king. Even the All-Father, Odin himself, was not free of their weaving. For in Norse thought, fate was not a thing one could escape. It was not punishment nor gift, it simply was. As water flows downhill, so too did life flow along the course set by the Norns' weaving hands. Imagine them now, 3 figures seated at the root of the world tree, shadows falling across the rippling surface of the well. One dips her hand into the water, pulling from it the memory of what has been. Another sets her eyes on what unfolds now, the choices made, the paths walked. The third gazes ahead to the horizon that has not yet come, shaping what shall be. Their weaving is silent, but its weight is inescapable. All things, gods, men, beasts, even the world itself, move according to the pattern they spin. The well of Urd was a place of gathering. Each day the gods of Asgard came to sit by its side, beneath the great trunk of Yggdrasil. There they held council, speaking of the 9 worlds, of the fates that pressed upon them, of the doom that even they could not evade. The presence of the well reminded them always of their limits. They were powerful, yes, but not beyond fate. The Norns did not bow to them, nor to any. They served only the order of time, the unfolding of the tapestry that bound all things together. Yet Urd's well was not the only spring at Yggdrasil's roots. Another was Mimir's well, said to lie beneath the root that stretched into Jotunheim, the land of the giants. Its waters did not hold fate, but wisdom, deep, endless wisdom, more than any god or man could contain. So great was this well that Odin himself, hungry for knowledge, sought to drink from it. But wisdom came at a cost. Mimir, guardian of the spring, demanded sacrifice, and so Odin gave an eye, leaving it in the waters as payment, so that he might drink of their depth. From that day forward, one of his sockets was empty, but in return he saw further than any other, into the mysteries of the world, into the secrets of the runes, into the threads of destiny themselves. To the Norse, this sacrifice showed a truth. Wisdom is never free. It is bought with pain, with loss, with something of the self surrendered in order to see more clearly. The third great spring lay beneath the root that reached into Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist. It was called Hvergelmir. From it poured many rivers, spilling out across the land, feeding seas and shaping valleys. But Hvergelmir was not gentle. It was said that serpents writhed in its depths, that poison flowed among its waters, and that Nidhöggr, the dragon who gnawed at Yggdrasil's roots, drank there. This spring was the raw force of nature, wild, dangerous, unbridled. From it life flowed, but so too did death. It was reminder that creation and destruction are never far apart, that the same waters that nourish may also drown. So we see the roots of Yggdrasil touching three worlds, and each spring offering its gift. From Urd's well came fate, inescapable and binding. From Mimir's well came wisdom, costly yet priceless. From Hvergelmir came raw power, dangerous yet necessary. Together they gave the world tree its endurance, feeding its roots, shaping its life, and in turn holding the 9 realms in place. Think for a moment of how these wells echo truths of our own lives. Fate, wisdom, and power. All are sources of strength, yet none are simple. Fate reminds us that there are things we cannot change, paths that unfold whether we will them to or not. Wisdom reminds us that knowledge often demands sacrifice, that to see further means to give something up, and power, in its raw form, is never without danger, capable of building or of destroying. In Yggdrasil's roots, the Norse wove these truths together, not as abstract ideas, but as living springs, flowing always, shaping all things. And so, in this second vision of the world tree, we stand not beneath its trunk nor among its branches, but at its roots. We hear the trickling of sacred water, the murmur of the Norns weaving their threads, the silence of gods gathered in council, the whisper of wisdom from Mimir's well, and the roar of Hvergelmir's rivers as they rush into the world. All this beneath the soil, unseen yet ever present, the hidden lifeblood that allows Yggdrasil to endure. As we linger here, the lesson is quiet but clear. Strength does not lie only in what is seen. It lies also in what is hidden, in the roots below, in the wells that nourish, in the truths that shape us, though we may not always notice them. Yggdrasil endures not only because of its towering branches, but because of its unseen roots, and so too perhaps do we. Yggdrasil is never silent. Even when wind sleeps and frost holds its breath, there is a quiet movement in the great tree, a rustle, a scrape, a patter of small feet, a slow gnawing far below. The Norse imagined the world tree not as empty pillar, but as a living home, busy with beings who, in their different ways, test it, tend it, and tell us something about the world it binds together. Begin at the deepest places, where roots push through dark earth and older stone. There, among the cold streams and the coiling tunnels, lives a dragon. The Norse named it Nidhöggr, a creature of hunger and patience. It gnaws at the roots, not in fury, not in haste, but with the steady rhythm of time itself. One jawful, then another, a scraping, a swallow, a pause. The work of undoing is never finished, and Nidhöggr reminds us of that. The tree endures, yet wears its wounds. The dragon drinks from chill waters and returns again. Creation and corrosion, side by side, both present, both real. It would be easy to make Nidhöggr the enemy, to say that if only the dragon were slain, the tree would stand untroubled and whole. But the Norse were not given to easy tales. They knew that even without malice, things are worn down by time, by frost, by tooth and claw. The dragon is not a mistake in the story, it is part of the story. It does what the deep does. It pulls, it dissolves, it returns all things toward their sources, and yet the tree grows, drinks, mends, and continues. Both truths sit together, the bite at the root and the rise of the sap. Climb now, from the underground quiet into the uplift of the trunk, and out to the open air where the light lies thin and pale. At the topmost reaches of Yggdrasil there sits an eagle, great-winged, still, and far-sighted. It watches the breadth of the worlds from a height no road can reach. Some tell that a small hawk perches between the eagle's eyes, a second sight within sight, a sharper point of focus in the vast view. From this crown, wind begins, feathers shift, a flutter is enough to send a whisper across leaves and lands. If the dragon is the patient weight of endings, the eagle is the long view of beginnings, distance, clarity, and the cool, impartial gaze that sees not only one life, one world, but all nine together. Between root and crown runs a smaller creature, tireless and bright-eyed. The squirrel Ratatoska makes the long journey again and again, carrying words, carrying barbs, carrying the hot spark of insult from below to above and back again. It darts along the bark, tail flicking, claws tapping, and in its leaping path quarrels are kept alive. The eagle's disdain is delivered downward, the dragon's anger is borne upward. Messages sharpen as they travel, tempers do not cool with distance. In Ratatoska, the Norse gave mischief a messenger, and in doing so they named something ordinary and true. How easily we keep resentments moving, how quick we are to carry whatever stings. It is tempting to laugh at the squirrel, a little shape against a giant tree, but the Norse understood that small things can keep great tensions awake. A jest handed on, a rumor fed, a slight repeated in brighter words. In this way, the tree is not only a map of the worlds, it is a map of our habits. We know the path Ratatoska runs because we have walked it too, in our own fashion. The lesson is not shouted, it simply scampers past, and we notice it if we will. Lower, along the broad boughs where leaves gather dew, stags move with quiet steps. They feed from the green edge of the tree, heads lifting and lowering in a slow rhythm, breath clouding in the morning chill. Some tell that there are 4, and some give them names, but the names matter less than their nature. They are gentle thieves, taking and yet giving, for from antler and muzzle falls a fine wetness that becomes rivers and streams. What is nibbled above returns as blessing below. The Norse would have known this circle, grazing on high hills, meltwater running in spring, brooks swelling into rivers that feed the low fields. The stags do not threaten the tree as the dragon does. They remind it and us that taking and giving is a cycle, and that the same act can be both wound and nourishment depending on where we stand to watch it. In the dim places beneath, where roots cross like the ribs of old ships, serpents make their home. Not one only, but many. They coil in the hollows, cold and shining, tongues tasting the thin water that seeps along the bark. When they move, the soil shifts. When they sleep, the ground looks still, but it is not still. It is held by the weight of their bodies. They do not speak, but they are a kind of sentence nevertheless. The world holds quiet powers we do not notice until they rise. The Norse gave these quiet powers a shape we could picture, and they set them at the tree's feet to keep us honest about the deep. The branches are home to smaller life as well, birds that do not sing loudly but murmur, beetles that leave thin, careful lines like writing on the wood, insects that rest in the warm folds where bark holds a little sun. Each leaves a mark, each takes a little. Each gives a little. A tree is not a single thing. It is 1,000 lives held together by one trunk. And if that is so of trees we can touch, how much more so of the world tree, which holds not one forest, but the very shape of existence. If you listen softly, you can hear a conversation taking place across the whole height of Yggdrasil. Below, the slow scrape of the dragon. Above, the rustle of great feathers. Between, the quick pattern of small feet. Along the boughs, the patient cropping of stags. Nothing is wasted in this conversation. The tree receives each voice and becomes itself through them. It is not a quiet born of emptiness, but a quiet born of balance. Tension here, release there, loss here, renewal there. The Norse knew this pattern from their own winters and brief summers, from sea voyages and burnt fields. They set it in the bark so it could be seen. At times the gods stand and watch these creatures, and in watching take counsel. They do not rush to destroy the dragon, nor to silence the squirrel, nor to drive off the deer. They understand that to end all trouble is to end all change, and to end all change is to end all growing. Instead, they choose smaller acts. They water the bark. They gather in wisdom. They prepare for storms. They accept that there are forces one guides by living with them, not by erasing them. The creatures do not obey the gods. They obey their natures. The gods do not own the tree. They share it. Perhaps the gentlest lesson of the creatures is this: endurance is not stillness. Yggdrasil endures, but it does not freeze itself in order to last. It breathes through challenge. It drinks through wound. It hosts what unsettles it. It allows what nibbles at it to remain, and in remaining, those guests become part of its story, even part of its strength. A tree without scars is a sapling. A world without friction is a dream. The world tree is neither. It is a grown thing that has learned the art of bearing. And if we turn from myth to ourselves for a moment, we may recognize our own creatures. We too have dragons that eat away at our roots. Slow worries, old griefs, the work of years that wears us thin. We too have eagles, moments of clear seeing, a wide view that steadies us. We have our squirrels, the quick messages we carry that keep quarrels alive. We have our stags, small daily takings that return as rivers in some other part of life. We live, as Yggdrasil lives, in the meeting of all these, troubled and tended, diminished and renewed. So let us stand once more beneath the branches and listen. The scrape below does not stop. The wind above does not settle forever. The quick feet do not tire. The soft mouths do not cease. Yet the trunk before us is firm. The sap climbs. The leaves open and close with season. The tree is not free of its creatures, and it is not undone by them. It is itself because of them. That is the calm at the heart of this chapter. Not a promise that the biting will end, but a promise that meaning can endure alongside it. When we leave the creatures to their work and step back, the shape of Yggdrasil seems both simpler and more intricate. Simpler because we see the pattern, forces that pull down, forces that lift up, forces that carry, forces that return. More intricate because each of those forces has a face, a name, a movement we can feel. The Norse gave us these faces so that the wide truths of the world would be near enough to touch. In the next turning, we will follow the thread that binds the gods most tightly to the tree, the search for wisdom, the taste of sacrifice, the weight of fate that even a god cannot cast aside. But for now, let the small sounds settle into the background like a steady rain. The dragon at the root, the eagle in the high air, the squirrel on the bark, the deer along the boughs, Yggdrasil alive with company and still somehow at rest. The world tree is not only a bridge between realms, nor only a host for wells and creatures. It is also a witness, a silent keeper of oaths, of sacrifices, and of destinies that cannot be avoided. For in the Norse imagination, nothing, not even the gods themselves, could escape the pattern that Yggdrasil carried in its bark and sap. The tree was the center of their world, but it was also the stage on which their fates were bound to unfold. Among all the gods, Odin knew this truth most deeply. The All-Father, seeker of wisdom, wanderer across worlds, gave himself again and again to the pursuit of knowledge. No price was too high, if only it revealed more of the hidden threads. At Mimir's well he gave his eye, trading sight for sight, losing the ordinary to gain the extraordinary. And still, this was not enough. To know the runes, to unlock the deep magic that lay beneath words and woven into the world itself, Odin turned to Yggdrasil. The tale tells that he hung himself upon the world tree. For 9 nights he swayed there, pierced by his own spear, with no bread, no mead, no comfort, but the cold wind through the branches, alone, wounded, yet enduring. In that long vigil he looked down into the abyss beneath the roots, and at last the runes revealed themselves to him. From pain he won knowledge. From self-offering he gained strength beyond strength. This was not the triumph of a god free of suffering, but of a god who understood that true wisdom is purchased only through sacrifice. Yggdrasil bore his weight, held his silence, witnessed his pain, and so became the companion of his enlightenment. But the lessons of the tree did not end with Odin. For all the gods, Yggdrasil was a reminder that power does not mean freedom from fate. The Norns spun their threads by its roots. The wells reflected the courses that must be walked, and in the prophecies of Ragnarök, the end of all things, the trembling of Yggdrasil itself was named. No branch, no root, no leaf could stand untouched when the final battle came. The Norse did not imagine eternity as stillness. For them, all things had their time, even the sky, even the earth, even the gods. The world tree itself, vast and enduring though it was, would one day shake, its roots rattling, its branches shivering as the last struggle broke upon it. This was Ragnarök, the doom of the gods. Fire would meet frost, sea would consume land, stars would fall from their high branches, and the tree would tremble under the weight of it all. And yet, Ragnarök was not only ending. The Norse did not tell of it as a final void. Out of the breaking of the old would come the rising of the new. Two humans sheltered within Yggdrasil's embrace would survive, hidden in the wood of the tree itself. From them, life would begin again. The branches would green once more. The roots would drink again from the wells. The cycle would continue, not without pain, not without loss, but with renewal hidden inside the ruin. Yggdrasil was thus both the bearer of doom and the seed of hope. Pause for a moment with this vision. Picture the tree, vast and scarred, yet filled with quiet strength. At its crown, stars glitter like blossoms. At its roots, waters flow with memory and fate. Creatures move across it, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce. Gods gather at its side, knowing that even they cannot change the course woven beneath its bark. And far ahead, the tremor of an ending waits. Yet in that ending lies the promise of beginning. Yggdrasil is not only the center of the worlds, it is the rhythm of time itself, ever cycling, ever renewing. Perhaps this is why the Norse placed such weight upon it. For them, the world tree was not a dream of safety. It did not promise that hardship would vanish or that sorrow would be erased. Instead, it promised something quieter, something deeper, that endurance is possible, that renewal follows ruin, that even when the branches shake and the roots bleed, life has a way of returning. In this lesson, Yggdrasil is not far from us. We too live in seasons. We too know loss and gain, endings and beginnings. We too are bound by threads unseen, yet strengthened by the roots that nourish us even when we do not notice them. In the sagas, the gods returned daily to Yggdrasil. They did not go there to command it, nor to master it, but to listen, to witness, to take counsel at its roots. Even Odin, for all his wisdom, did not escape its lessons. He learned them through pain, through loss, through the slow recognition that power without sacrifice is empty. And in the end, even he was bound by the fate the Norns spun. In this way, Yggdrasil stands not only as a tree of life, but as a teacher, silent, patient, unyielding in its truths. And so, as we close this chapter, let us linger once more at its base. The bark is scarred, yet strong. The roots are gnawed, yet deep. The branches tremble, yet still they rise toward the sky. Yggdrasil endures, not because it is untouched, but because it lives through its wounds, and because it carries within itself the seeds of what comes next. In this perhaps lies the deepest wisdom of all, that even in endings there is continuation, that even in fate there is meaning, that even in silence there is growth. And so, another journey comes to its close. We have stood at the roots of Yggdrasil and listened to the waters that feed it. We have watched the Norns weave their threads, patient and unbroken. We have climbed with the squirrel, looked down with the eagle, and felt the slow bite of the dragon in the dark. We have walked among gods and mortals alike, all bound by the same branches, all tied into the same bark. And we have seen how even the world tree, vast and eternal, trembles beneath the weight of fate, yet still carries within itself the promise of renewal. Through Yggdrasil, the Norse gave shape to truths that still speak softly now, that all things are connected, that endurance is not freedom from struggle but the strength to live through it, and that even endings carry the seeds of beginnings. The tree remains a myth, yet also a mirror, one in which we may see ourselves, scarred yet standing, wounded yet growing, bound together by threads we do not always see, but which hold us nonetheless. Here, in the quiet archive of human story and thought, the tale of Yggdrasil rests once more. May its branches shelter your dreams tonight, may its roots steady your sleep, and may you wake renewed as the tree renews itself again and again across the turning of time. This has been Midnight Scholar. Sleep well until our next journey together.